In the winter of 1998, a series of unexplained events unfolded in a quiet corner of Battlefield, Vermont, a town known more for antique shops than nightmares. What makes this story disturbing is not just what happened, but who witnessed it, documented it, and tried to explain it away. Museum records, private journals, and sworn statements all point to the same conclusion. This is not folklore. This is a true story. For decades, haunted dolls have been dismissed as exaggerations or psychological tricks. But this case does not revolve around porcelain dolls or children's toys. It centers on marionettes, ventriloquist dummies, and mechanical automata, objects designed to imitate life with unsettling precision. Collectors, curators, and puppeteers began experiencing the same phenomena. Movement without touch, voices without speakers, commands whispered in rooms where no one stood. What follows is the documented account of how one forgotten dollmaker left behind creations that were never meant to be still. This story was reconstructed from interviews, police records, and the private audio journals of a museum archivist who disappeared 6 months after his final entry. The first name connected to this case is Elric Henshaw, a 52-year-old archival conservator working at the Northwood Historical Museum. Elric was known for cataloging neglected artifacts, items too unsettling or obscure for public display. In October of 1998, he was assigned a sealed estate shipment recovered from a defunct family property near the Canadian border. The shipment contained 11 marionettes, 3 ventriloquist dummies, and 1 large clockwork automaton shaped like a child. All were handcrafted between 1890 and 1912, bearing the same carved symbol beneath their jawlines. The symbol did not match any known artisan mark. Elric documented that the marionettes were unusually heavy for their size. Their joints resisted movement, as though stiffened by internal tension rather than age. One marionette, a long-limbed figure with glass eyes and a fixed smile, had strings that were knotted in patterns Elric described as deliberate, almost ceremonial. 2 nights after the items were placed in cold storage, the museum's motion sensors triggered an alarm at 2:17 a.m. Security footage revealed something impossible. The marionettes had shifted positions. Not fallen. Not knocked over. Rearranged. When questioned, the night guard, Maylise Crowther, age 34, refused to give a statement. She resigned the following morning and later told a local journalist that she heard wooden joints rehearsing movement behind the storage door. Elric continued his work. His personal audio journal from November 3rd contains the first mention of sound. He recorded faint tapping noises coming from inside the storage crates, rhythmic and intentional. When he opened one crate, he found the ventriloquist dummy inside facing the lid, its mouth slightly open, jaw loosened as if recently used. Over the next week, Elric began receiving anonymous envelopes at his office. Inside were photographs of the marionettes taken from angles that did not exist within the museum. One photo showed the child-shaped automaton standing upright, its wind key slowly turned to the right. The return address was always the same: Gallowmere Lane. Historical records revealed Gallowmere Lane once housed Osric Vale, a reclusive dollmaker rumored to craft performance puppets for traveling theaters in the early 1900s. No birth certificate. No death record. Just disappearance. Elric's final journal entry for that week ends with a sentence he repeated 3 times, each time more quietly. They are not moving. They are being moved. By mid-November 1998, the Northwood Historical Museum had quietly restricted access to its lower archival wing. Officially, it was due to climate control maintenance. Unofficially, staff members were refusing to work near the storage rooms containing the dolls. Several employees reported the same sensation, being watched from below eye level, as if something shorter was always standing just behind them. Elric Henshaw began sleeping inside his office. He claimed he was worried about theft, but his journal suggests a deeper fear. He wrote that the marionettes behaved differently at night. During the day, they remained inert. After sunset, their joints loosened, strings slackening as if they no longer needed them. On November 14th, A freelance puppeteer named Rowan Beckett, age 41, was invited to examine the collection. Rowan had performed across the UK and the northeastern United States and specialized in antique marionette restoration. Within minutes of entering the storage room, Rowan identified something deeply wrong. He stated that the marionettes were trained. Not mechanically trained, but behaviorally conditioned. The wear patterns on their joints suggested repeated motion sequences, always performed in the same order. Rowan also noted faint bite marks inside one dummy's mouth, as if someone had clenched their teeth there repeatedly while speaking. That night, Rowan stayed late to record close-up footage. At 1:42 a.m., the camera captured something the museum never released publicly. The footage shows the child-shaped automaton rotating its head exactly 9 degrees, stopping, then rotating back, without its wind key being engaged. At the same time, audio picked up a low whisper. The voice did not come from the automaton. It came from the marionette rack behind it. The words were indistinct, but Rowan later testified he heard a command: "Stand straight." Within days, Rowan began experiencing violent sleep paralysis. He described dreaming of strings wrapped around his wrists and throat, pulling him upright while something unseen practiced his voice. He would wake with jaw pain, his mouth sore as if forced open for hours. Elric's journal entries became erratic. He wrote about discovering new knots forming on the marionette strings, knots he never tied. Complex ones. Nautical. The kind used by stage riggers and sailors, not museum workers. One entry mentions a name being spoken inside the archive room after closing hours. Osric is rehearsing. The investigation into Osric Vale uncovered fragmented records from early 1900s traveling theaters. Performers described Vale as a man who believed puppets were vessels, not tools. He reportedly refused to perform himself, insisting that the dolls should be allowed to speak without interference. One letter, recovered from a private collector in Maine, claimed that Vale believed the human voice corrupted a puppet's purpose. To purify it, he practiced ventriloquism alone in dark rooms, allowing the dolls to learn the sound of command. As November ended, the museum received its first formal complaint from a neighboring business. After hours, they could hear wood striking wood, followed by applause. Slow. Deliberate. As if an audience of one was approving a performance. On December 2nd, Elric failed to arrive at work. His office was locked from the inside. Inside, investigators found his chair overturned, the recorder still running, and the marionettes positioned in a semicircle facing the desk. The ventriloquist dummy sat closest, its mouth fully open. The final recording captures Elric whispering, not in fear, but exhaustion. "They don't need strings anymore. They only need someone to listen." The official report stated that Elric Henshaw suffered a psychological breakdown and vanished voluntarily. However, the crime scene contradicted that conclusion. There were no signs of forced entry, no blood, and no evidence of struggle. Only absence, as if Elric had simply stepped out of existence between sentences. What disturbed investigators most was the layout of the room. The marionettes had been arranged symmetrically, their strings coiled neatly at their feet. Several strings were missing entirely, cut cleanly, not torn. Following Elric's disappearance, the museum authorized the removal of the dolls for independent evaluation. They were divided among 3 locations: a private collector's estate in Norfolk, England, a restoration lab in Salem, Massachusetts, and a locked evidence vault maintained by the Vermont State Cultural Board. Within 10 days, incidents began at all 3 sites. In Salem, restoration technician Iveron Slate, age 29, reported hearing whispered rehearsal cues while working alone. He described the sensation of someone standing behind him, guiding his hands. When questioned, Iveron admitted that his own voice began changing, slipping into unfamiliar rhythms, pausing at unnatural intervals, as though waiting for instructions. Security footage later revealed Iveron standing motionless in front of a ventriloquist dummy for over 3 hours. Neither moved. The room's audio picked up a faint exchange. Two voices. One human, one not. Iveron was found days later in his apartment, seated upright in a chair, wrists bound loosely with puppet string. The coroner listed the cause of death as cardiac arrest induced by extreme stress. His jaw muscles showed signs of prolonged strain. In Norfolk, collector Thaddeus Morell, age 61, hosted a private viewing of one marionette for fellow enthusiasts. Guests reported that the doll appeared heavier each time it was passed between them. During dinner, the marionette fell from its stand and landed upright. Witnesses swear no one touched it. That night, Thaddeus claimed he heard a child practicing words from inside his collection room. He found all the dolls facing the door. One marionette strings were wrapped around the handle from the inside. The following morning, Thaddeus was discovered in his study, mouth open, eyes fixed forward. His vocal cords were severely damaged. He never spoke again. The Vermont Evidence Vault recorded the most chilling data. Motion sensors activated repeatedly, but video footage showed no movement, until technicians enhanced the contrast. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed shadows rehearsing positions milliseconds before the objects themselves moved. Psychologists brought in to assess the pattern proposed mass hysteria, sleep deprivation, and suggestion. But their explanation failed when Dr. Lisa Carr-Rowan, age 47, one of the evaluators, began reporting involuntary speech during sessions. She stated that certain phrases surfaced without conscious thought. Commands. Stage directions. Corrections. In her final report, Dr. Carr-Rowan wrote that the objects were not haunted in the traditional sense. There was no single spirit. Instead, there was imitation, a learned behavior transferred from human to object over decades. Osric Vale had not trapped a soul inside his creations. He had trained them. By late December 1998, all remaining marionettes and dummies were ordered destroyed. The automaton could not be dismantled. Every attempt caused mechanical failure in surrounding equipment. On December 29th, during transport, the convoy driver reported hearing applause from the cargo hold. Slow. Measured. Satisfied. The transport convoy never reached its destination. According to official logs, the vehicle carrying the remaining marionettes and the automaton experienced a mechanical failure on a remote stretch of Route 112 in New Hampshire, just after midnight on December 29, 1998. The driver, Callum Reese, age 44, abandoned the truck and walked nearly 2 miles to the nearest ranger station. When questioned, Callum was unable to explain why he had unlocked the cargo hold before fleeing. He later stated that the applause had stopped, replaced by something worse. Silence. Not empty silence, but attentive silence. The kind that waits for instruction. Authorities recovered the truck 6 hours later. The cargo hold was empty. No tracks. No signs of forced removal. No evidence of theft. Only one item remained behind. A single marionette string tied neatly to the rear latch, knotted in the same ceremonial pattern Elric Henshaw had described weeks earlier. In January 1999, a classified hearing was held by the Vermont State Cultural Board. Surviving witnesses, including museum staff, technicians, and psychological evaluators, were ordered to provide sealed testimony. Each account differed in detail but aligned in one disturbing way. Every witness claimed that the objects did not act randomly. They rehearsed. One final discovery emerged during the hearing. A private collector in Oregon submitted an anonymous package containing a wooden marionette that matched the missing collection. Inside its hollow chest cavity was a cassette tape labeled in faded ink. Final performance, Osric Vale. The audio, later deemed too dangerous for public release, reportedly contains layered voices, some human, some mechanical, reciting stage directions. Midway through the tape, a calm voice instructs another to stand, breathe, and speak clearly. The voice giving the command was identified as Elric Henshaw. The voice obeying was not. The case was officially closed in March 1999. All documentation was sealed. The incident was reclassified as a combination of occupational stress, mass suggestion, and folklore exaggeration. The museum's lower archive was permanently closed and converted into storage that remains unused to this day. Yet collectors still report sightings. Rare marionettes appearing at estate sales with unfamiliar knots in their strings. Ventriloquist dummies that feel warm to the touch. Automata that function without winding. And puppeteers, especially those who work alone, continue to report the same sensation late at night. That something nearby is waiting, not to move, but to be told how. This was a true story, documented through interviews, sealed records, and testimonies that were never meant to reach the public. Some stories fade with time. Others are simply hidden, waiting for the right moment to resurface. If this story unsettled you, you're not alone. Many who encountered these objects claimed the experience followed them long after the events ended. If you've ever felt watched by something that shouldn't be alive, or heard a sound you couldn't explain, share your experience in the comments. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, awareness is the only thing that keeps certain performances from beginning again.